Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Anime Night in the Dojo. Today's featured show, Slime, Season 4.
Hi up, Slime, Season 4, Episode 4. Welcome back to the Dojo. I'm Ryu. That's Age. We're back for more Anime Night in the Dojo. And, well, last time we got full-on Maribel backstory cold open with a bunch of extra stuff. And, you know, Age and I were talking about, like, the Tanya comparisons. It's like, yeah, that's probably going to be one of the weirdest things about, like, being isekai in that way is, like, you know, you have all the memories of your previous life, and then you're sitting there in the body of a baby going, I have to wait like 15 years before I can do anything. This sucks. Except for characters like Maribel who are using, you know, like the great thing, and she can get stuff done like at a younger age. But when you're talking about somebody who's like wants to be physical, or like in the case of Tanya, like have to, you know, be able to do stuff, you know what I mean, from a physical standpoint, you know what I mean. Characters like Maribel can pull off stuff by the age of 10, obviously, because she has her full, you know, cognitive capability. She just has to be able to get around. The second she's able to walk, she's pretty much capable of doing everything that she needs to do with her power of greed. You know what I mean? So...
Yeah, which, like, I mean, we see, like, even when she's like, first born, she's already capable of freaking controlling Wet Nurse.
Yeah. So...
But, yeah, as more of a puppeteer character, she is better off in that situation than Tanya was. But it still is that whole thing of, like, you have a full lifetime's worth of experience of being able to do things, and then you're stuck in a body that can't do things.
Yeah, that's got to be unbelievably frustrating. I mean, it would be cool to have your past life memories and, you know, capabilities and experiences and stuff and whatnot, obviously. But, that would probably be one of the things that a lot of people would struggle with if they were put in that situation, is like having to grow up again. You know what I mean? Rimuru didn't have to worry about that because he was a slime. That's different. You know what I mean? But for
it's
like the general life cycle of most other beings, you know, you have to kind of be a kid and grow up. You don't just like pop out of the mother and you're, you know, like a teenager or something, ready to go.
Yeah, no, slimes are one of those kinds of species that they don't have an adolescence, really. They just are born more or less fully adult.
Yep. So, you know, once again, Rimuru's biological age here in this new world is like 3 about right now.
Yeah.
So that's just something to think about. But either way, last episode was quite good. You know, I enjoyed the backstory, all that stuff. It definitely brought up the interesting points of reincarnation for Maribel in particular, because once again, she did live a full life and just died of natural causes / old age and not like a truck or something. So...
Which one thing I did want to mention that I forgot last time was we talked about, you know, her greed power and stuff like that, but we do know the whole thing is that, like, reincarnated are the strongest otherworlders. And that while, like, strays and summons get their one signature skill, reincarnated get a variety of skills.
Yep. Like
Rimuru got gluttony, but he also, you know, got Great Sage and a number of other things to start. So Maribel, while she has greed and that's her signature, she probably still has a number of other skills too.
Yep. So lots of interesting stuff going on here. We had the stuff going on at the end of the episode with Soe as well, so that'll probably be a plot point. We'll probably be shelving the dungeon stuff for a little until something else happens with it, kind of thing. But it's also kind of a neat, like, side story thing to just like have Mjolnir and Ramirez show up to, you know, stuff at some point. We all know Malim's going to get in trouble with Frey again at some point. You know what I mean? She's probably going to try to hide in that slime form for as long as she can, but her little hair dealie is probably going to give her away.
Thanks. Once again, she is supposed to be the ruler of Eurasania now because what's his face, the Beast Lord, decided to forfeit his position as a demon lord.
Yep. So she's got stuff to do, but either way, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff coming. We'll have a ton to talk about again, but might as well just get going here and push some buttons and see what happens with this episode. So people on Patreon, we'll see you on the other side of the edit for the timer reaction, and people on YouTube beyond, we'll see you on the other side for the discussion and review, and all the links in the description of each video. Link you to whatever you want to watch, and the various links of stuff that we do. So yeah, we're going to push some buttons and get going. So here goes some. Well, already then there you guys have it. A pretty full episode. A bunch of different random stuff happened. Wasn't just like random meetings, dragging on. I mentioned the whole Mealmeyer thing from last season. Action there, but the the legend of the Dungeon Dominators has been established. They're well, they're doing what they're set out to do, was to make sure that Masayuki continues being the poster boy and not having to pay out that stellar gold coin for beating floor 50.
Yeah, they don't want to have to pay more people, so they don't want them to get to floor 50. But then also a big part of their whole thing at the moment is the PR ploy of trying to make Masayuki be the one to clear all the major challenges first.
Right. So it's called controlling the narrative. Okay? Especially since right here during the broadcast where they were showing it off, that Masayuki is apparently blessed by quote-unquote RNGesus. Hilarious, by the way. These broadcasts, they use the word edited broadcasts. So that's hilarious. So, that's how you get people to buy into that crap. You don't show them the bad games you have with the new tank from World of Tanks. You show the 10,000 damage games and it dominating on the battlefield.
Yeah, and Rimuru is getting his getting his wrestling on by also, broadcasting the heel teams.
Yeah. Now, they're like known as the Dungeon Dominators, and they're kind of like that thing that you don't want to run into the dungeon, because then, your run's going to be over.
Yeah, they're basically playing themselves up as the equivalent of like the Reaper in Persona games, where it's like you don't have to worry just about being able to navigate and clear the dungeon. You also have to figure out how to not get freaking RKO'd by these guys.
Yeah. So I think a case scenario for a lot of the adventurers should be have your return flute literally on your neck, so you can just pull it up and get out if you see them, and that should just be the that would be me. I'd be like, all right, we're going in here. If we see any one of those four, immediately don't even think about it. Just hearth out.
Everyone's got to learn how to bubble hearth.
Pretty much. So, like that one guy said, all their hard work is basically going to be amount to nothing, because they had made enough currency to offset, what they spent, on the reincarnation bracelets and the whistles and stuff. But you know what I mean. That's how they're making money.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's the typical rogue shenanigans of getting greedy and continuing to push on, but you don't get any of your reward unless you cash out. Yep.
So you kind of got to cash out. So this is more of the dungeon than I thought we'd get. But, we talked about characters getting different clothing, and I think Malim's been the poster child for slime, with people having different outfits. She's gone through 8 or 9 different outfits.
Yeah, she changes clothing quite frequently. She's kind of weird in that a lot of times with characters change clothing frequently, they just kind of change clothing and that becomes their new outfit for a while. But Malim has a bunch of different outfits she's always swapping around between, and she still has her default outfit that she goes back to periodically.
Yeah. So that's kind of an interesting, just random side note of her character is, yes, Veldora's worn a couple other random things, when he was posing as just the average guy, and they put him in the t-shirt and khaki shorts and sandals or whatever, and the sunglasses to make sure people couldn't tell who he was or whatever. But
yeah, Veldora's never really cared about appearance though. He's always just he wears enough to cover himself to be considered decent, basically, and that's really all he ever puts thought into clothing and whatnot.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and then they have the special ceremonial kimonos and stuff like that. But most of the other characters that we see, all the Oni, ever since they've evolved the first time, they've had the same outfits outside of special case scenarios. You know what I mean? They've all had the same stuff. She owns in her secretary outfit the whole time, kind of stuff. it is definitely interesting that Malim just kind of is. You never know what she's going to show up in. That's kind of interesting to see what she does. Though, to be fair, this is like the 5th different outfit we've seen Frey wear, and she is trying to kill the internet with this outfit, apparently. I can't believe I did not see people posting about this. How the hell is this not unlike every mommy forum? Like, are people not watching the show? Did they miss this? What the hell? This is like full-on Lady D style thirst trap.
Frey has always put a lot of effort in her appearance. She's always been a very proud kind of character, and like she has always wore pretty. She's always put a lot of effort into what she wears, whenever we've seen her.
Yeah, but still, it's like wow.
Even now that she's given her, now that after she's given up her position as a demon lord, she still puts a lot of effort into being Malim's second.
Yeah. But still, it's like usually this kind of crap is like day one and everybody's losing their minds. So I'm kind of surprised I haven't seen this yet. It's probably being overshadowed by all the ReZero spoilers I'm getting, because we started talking about that first. So I'm not getting all the slime crap. we all know that's how the internet works. It's the first thing you start talking about. They don't care about what you start talking about the second time. So always start talking about like Haagen-Dazs ice cream, and then you'll be fine. Hit all those and then talk about what, right? And then the only annoying thing will be ice cream ads. But either way, yeah, this was definitely one of those things where it's just like, we knew Frey was going to show up. Everybody noped out, bailed on Malim. She is totally dead and fed to the harpies. Literally. Like we mentioned in the freaking live reaction, because that's what she is. She's the Sky Queen, Frey. They're all harpies. In case anybody forgot, they're able to, transform at will, like we saw with her hand right there. There you go.
Yeah, that's harpies in this are technically considered a species of beast folk, and all beast folk have like transformative abilities to make themselves more or less humanoid.
Right. Now, I am curious, because you could argue that it was Ramirez, but Frey mentions, oh, it looks like the person I sent to keep you in line or whatever has also started goofing off. So was that a dig at Veldora and or Ramirez, or was this somebody else that she was mentioning?
Still drawing a blank on his name, but she could have potentially sent, what's his face, the Beast Lord guy.
Yeah, Carrion. We haven't seen what he's up to. He's probably just... Because he was supposed to be, her other, like, advisor. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Frey is her second in command, and Carrion is also part of her, like, advisory shenanigans.
I think we all know what Carrion's doing. He's living it up as Lion Mask. Stealing the hearts of teachers everywhere.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It could be a case of she sent Carrion to keep an eye on her, but then Carrion also fucked off and got busy, and we just haven't seen him yet because he's off doing his own thing.
Right. He's signing autographs and, posing. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's what it was, because why would she ask Veldora or Ramirez for that kind of favor? You know what I mean? You would think it'd be somebody from Irizania. You know what I mean?
Yeah, she doesn't.
One of the Beastketeers, maybe. But Carrion seems the most likely candidate to be goofing off, because the three Beastketeers are pretty serious characters, and none of them really goof off. The most goofing off we've seen from any of them was Albus when she got into it with Momoji over freaking Benimar. You know what I mean? So yeah, the only like non-serious thing any of the Beastketeers really do is just Albus with her like growing obsession over Benimaru. Yeah. So I highly doubt that's what she was referring to. We'll probably get a lion mask cutaway at some point, and then just like last season, Frey's gonna have her claws on something. Or it'd be funnier to me if it was like we cut to something in town next episode, like Shion doing her thing and listening and being happy to be in charge or whatever, and she's just walking through town or whatever, and then you just kind of see Frey in the background dragging two people, and you just kind of see the lion mask, and it's Malim and lion mask, and that's the callback to that.
Yeah, because once again, yeah, most likely someone from Irisania, because Frey, even when she was still a demon lord, was one of the weaker demon lords and didn't really have any sway over the other demon lords like Ramirez.
Yeah.
To really be able to have any pull like that.
Yeah.
She didn't really associate with any of the demon lords much besides Clayman.
Right.
And Clayman was reluctant. Freaking cooperation.
Yeah. So, and she doesn't have the sway over people like Shuna does. Because Shuna can command everybody that's not, Eldora. Everybody else is afraid of her. And Shion, obviously, because of the rivalry. But everyone else is terrified of Shuna. We saw it. I mean, it was the face. Rimuru thought he was going to get away with it. And then he died, Hisoka style. We've had a lot of these go around recently with these. This has to be a reference to that. I don't know if the Hisoka thing from Hunter x Hunter was the first iteration of this, just the fade to white, white line stick figure kind of deal. Yeah, but that was the one I remember the most because it was so just, he just dies. You know what I mean? The Hisoka face of when he just dies is just, And at this point, that's pretty old in anime. You know what I mean? That was 2011 Hunter x Hunter, so that was around 2014 when it aired or something like that. So,
it was somewhere around there, yeah. And then that actual chapter from Hunter x Hunter was even older than that.
Right. So if that was straight from the source material, then yeah, I mean, there absolutely could have been things like this. But I've seen a lot of older anime and stuff like that, and I hadn't seen anything like the Hisoka meme face, as I call it, where he just dies straight up, dies quote unquote, because he doesn't get the fight that he wants. So he just has his soul crushed, and he just fades to a colorless character with just white and black.
Yeah, I mean, basically his entire everything that he had been planning and doing up to that point was just to try to get a 1v1 with Crollo, just to find out he can't 1v1 Crollo.
Yeah, it's just I don't have, I can't fight anymore. And it's just dies, just straight up.
Just less 180 episodes worth of effort from Hisoka, just wasted.
Yep, that was the greatest waste of time ever. So it's always great with these callbacks. We've talked about and even if I'm wrong, that has to be one of the first versions. You know what I mean? But it's kind of whenever you see anybody with a golden aura, it's a nod to Super Saiyan. Okay, that's just what it is. It's what it's always going to be. That kind of thing. We saw it in the most recent season of Don Machi. You know what I mean? It was a pretty obvious nod. Veldora apparently is allowed to make whatever fucking references that he wants. You know what I mean? Because, in case anybody forgot, in Season 2, he launched a Kamehameha wave followed by a Shoryuken. Or whatever order that was. You know what I mean? So apparently Veldora is just allowed to pull from whatever other series that he feels like on any given day. Because he did it again.
Yeah, now apparently him and Ramirez are Jesse and James.
Yeah, now him and Ramirez are Jesse and James. So,
But also back on this frame, freaking, like I mentioned, pissing off Rimuru is only rule number 2. In what not to do in freaking Tempest. Rule number 1 is don't piss off Shuna.
Yep. And to that end, I will mention that Slime actually got a shout out in a series we watched recently with campfire cooking. Sui, the slime, and it's mentioned that Sui could potentially evolve into a king slime, and Makota's thought bubble
slime
thing just went to Rimuru in slime form with those mustache and cape thing when he was addressing the nation from last season.
Yeah, the whole Sui could turn into an emperor slime, and you'd think that he would either do a more generic emperor slime or since most of the slime Japanese slime shenanigans are based off of the slimes in Dragon Quest, it could even be the Dragon Quest emperor slime.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look anything like the Dragon Quest Emperor slime. No, it's just straight up just Rimuru in his royal attire instead.
Yeah, it's just Sui's face, which, we all know that if you've seen Campfire Cooking, Sui's eyes are just black dots, but Rimuru in slime form has, different expressions for his eyes. But, it's still, it was still a pretty hilarious shout out when, once again, there was the dungeon delving team that they ran into named Tempest. Okay, and then they had that cutaway with the Rimuru thing, so that was pretty interesting. That a lot of authors were just giving each other those nods. Like, it made sense to a certain extent, like when the Hunter x Hunter author had Sailor Moon references in his series, and the Sailor Moon author had Hunter x Hunter references in Sailor Moon, because they're married. You know what I mean? That's one thing. Those two authors are married. So that is one thing, but it seems to be like there's a lot more like nods to like fellow authors and stuff like that. You see like the big three authors like each drew like the main character of the other series. You know what I mean? As a thing. You know what I mean? Like Kubo drew Goku and Naruto and Luffy, that kind of thing, and then the others drew Ichigo and so on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's been a lot more just cooperation and camaraderie between manga authors lately. Like also the whole thing of like
Isekai Quartet being a thing, yeah.
All those authors,
or like the vast majority of the Katakawa umbrella is like a multiverse. You know what I mean? They're all connected somehow.
Yeah, at very least all the Isekai Quartet series have all like the authors have all officially said that they're all part of the same multiverse, and they've signed off on all the Isekai Quartet stuff, including contributing stuff, like the whole thing of Hoshin showing up in the movie, even though the actual writers for Isekai Quartet had no context for Hoshin. It was literally ReZero's author coming in there and being like, okay, this is Hoshin, this is what he's like, and here's what you can do with him.
Yeah. Because once again, for any fans of those series, everything in Isekai Quartet is canon to each of their individual universes. So that's something to consider. But since there wasn't a huge amount we could really say about this episode, it was a good episode for what it was. But we got the scolding stuff, the classic face, you know what I mean? Raphael doing Raphael things, which she got him again. You know what I mean? This is like the 5th time that she's done this.
Yeah, she's been getting more and more along with Shuna lately, even though, it's one-sided because Shuna doesn't even really know Raphael exists properly.
Yeah. Which, man, it's probably a good thing that Shuna and Shion don't know that Raphael exists, because, oh, what's that? You have a sexy female voice living in your head? Yeah, that wouldn't go over well. So, yeah, all this was pretty interesting. They went over, like, they talked about, like, currency stuff and that kind of world building. How they're moving to banknotes. That's definitely a thing to keep an eye on.
Yeah, the more we see about it and whatnot, it definitely seems like Maribel, she's might not be German specifically, but she's definitely HRE.
Yeah, she's definitely HRE.
She's definitely one of those nations, whether it's freaking Austrian, German, Denmark, freaking Italy,
yeah,
something HRE adjacent, even if she may not specifically be German, because
right.
Once again, she's controlling most of this, and she definitely seems to be modeling the West after the HRE.
Right. And for anybody who doesn't know what we're talking about the Holy Roman Empire from, the mid 1400s to the early 1600s. If you look at the Holy Roman Empire and all the city-states that were involved in that was far before Italy as a full nation was a thing. If you look at Italy from that era, there are things, Milan was its own thing, Tuscany was its own thing, Venice was its own thing, several other things, all the way down to, the papacy state. Naples was probably the biggest nation in the bottom half of Italy, right below Rome. You know what I mean? They were probably the biggest nation by landmass in Italy out of all of them. Tuscany, several other random things down there that were just their own thing. You know what I mean? So
yeah, which once again, she was around in like the 1900s, which is obviously way later than the HRE.
Yeah.
I'm just saying she probably was one of those formerly HRE nations.
Yeah.
And that she's basing her power structure here and her advancement of the world off of the history that she knows, which is the HRE.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, that's probably what she was going off of and how she became what she was. But then we come to the big meeting of the episode with, once again, pretty much all the members of the Western nations, which are city-states, which are very HRE-esque, and this entire thing is very HRE, and at the end of the day, they're basically trying to treat Rimuru like France or Spain or Poland, one of the major nations that are outside of their purview, and they want to ally with them to use their military force to further their gains as a collective bunch of freaking idiot nerds.
Essentially, yeah, to use like a historical context, essentially what this situation is it's the HRE trying to pull Poland into it to shield them against Russia.
Yeah. Something like that. So that's all this meeting was. Hinata was there basically for no freaking reason. She even points it out. They just invited her for whatever. They didn't even ask her for her opinion. Like, not even the guy up there. Hey, Lady Hinata, you're back there. Do you have anything to say about all these things that are being said about you? Literally to your face, but apparently behind your back. You know what I mean? So nothing. They just didn't even have her address the floor, which is insane from a tactical standpoint.
She doesn't want to chime in because she doesn't care about the noble politics shenanigans. And once again, they're playing off of the information that she knows is the stuff that they want them to play off of, like the whole thing of the lie of the stalemate and stuff like that. But yeah, the fact that none of them actually even tried to get her involved is
just further proves how dumb a lot of these city-state leaderships are outside of, I mentioned at the end of the reaction, Blumend. Blumend seems to be the only human nation besides Lubelius / Riberios that has half a freaking brain. You know what I mean? They're all like just minor lords that, think that they should rule the world collectively with their like beehive. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it just seems like all of the city-states are just too busy with their own internal politics to really care about affairs outside of the HRE. Besides, like, once again, Blumend has had direct involvement with Rimuru and Tempest and has their own separate agreements away from the council.
Yep. So, either way, this was definitely one of those situations, so it'll be interesting to see what Rimuru does with it. We had the Prince of Ingracia trying to convince Hinata to be his personal guard because, once again, because he's a member of the HRE and the Prince of Ingracia, which is like the gateway to the West, it's like, oh, she would totally do this. It's like, do you not know who she is? Like, even from her station, even if she wasn't, like, obviously trusting in Rimuru and, like, on his side, obviously, that, like, she is, and they don't know that until she kind of points it out, like, yeah, I trust in him. It's a kind of a stupid thing to ask literally the leader of the Holy Knights of another nation to be your personal freaking guard. Who the hell would take that position?
the Holy Knights of the biggest full actual like legit nation in the HRE.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like
that would basically be like one of the city-states asking the royal guard captain of Austria for the von Habsburgs to step away and be their personal guard. It's like, yeah. Are you insane? The hubris on some of these characters is truly impressive, but very realistic. While annoying to me, because these kind of characters' stupidity and lack of just any kind of foresight or intel gathering does annoy me on a personal level. There are plenty of rich people out there who are exactly like this, even today. Definitely in the past, absolutely. city-state leaders and small kings like that, and princes who think that they can just get whatever they want because they're prince of a nation. You know what I mean? So I'm sure this won't be the last time we hear about this, because oh yes, now Hinata has spurned the advances of a local lord. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, we get it. You know what I mean? You're a tool, but it's just always just aggravating to see these kind of characters, because as much as I dislike them, they are 100% realistic to a T.
Yeah, but once again, she is one of the like top officials in the biggest human nation that's part of the council.
Yep.
Freaking, once again, Reberios is considered to be an empire. It is just part of the Western Council, even though, like, once again, it is by far the biggest and capable of being totally independent on its own.
Right. So, yeah, it will be interesting to see if there's any merit to the whole Eastern Empire, mustering forces. That could just be them, that one guy just, like, making shit up to get them to agree to have, Tempest be their, Poland, basically. So it'll be interesting what kind of stupid nonsense that they'll try to pull, and Rimuru will just be like... Rimuru himself has pulled a lot of random stuff from history. You know what I mean? Like, he talked about, like, the Columbus is Eddie thing. You know what I mean? And Raphael was like, well, it wasn't as, like, fantastical as that. You know what I mean? But he has a lot of knowledge from, like, the previous world, and just how politics worked and how stuff worked. So he would probably look at this and go, didn't they do this, like, 400 years ago? Am I Poland? Oh, God, they're trying to make me Poland.
Yeah, no, Rimuru, from everything we've seen, is a very intelligent individual, even if he is very...
lazy?
What should we call it? Whimsical. Like,
yeah.
He just he does things based on his own, like, gut feeling at the time, but we've seen a number of times that he is actually very knowledgeable about things and quite intelligent.
When he's not being pulled apart by Shion, which I will point out that usually he doesn't get out of this, and he managed to get out of it this time. Because Shion was throwing one of her classic I can't go with you fits, which the last one destroyed this office, in case you guys forgot. And the last one was before she leveled up the second time, so I'm sure the Wicked Oni tantrum would have probably destroyed this entire building. So you kind of got to put out the fire quite quickly. And he did with the classic, but you're in charge of the house while we're gone. So, there is that, which, again, it's not like Tempest would be left with nobody there. I mean, Veldora and Ramiris would still be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're all around. all the dryads, you know what I mean? Everybody else that's lying around. So...
Yeah, Veldora and Ramiris are around for muscle, but they're not... neither of them are leaders in any way, shape, or form. They can't help keep things in freaking working order.
Yeah. But to her credit, Shion has gotten a lot better at her actual job over time. She has gotten incredibly competent after the whole ramen incident.
Yeah, no, the whole thing with Falmuth, between her dying and it being shown just how much her position as a secretary was more or less just ornamental. She has put in a lot more effort of actually, trying to be the proper secretary to a ruler.
And not lose to Diablo.
Yeah, and actually, keeping up on friggin' knowing how to manage shit and keeping track of politics with the neighbors and all that kind of stuff.
Yep. So, either way, this was another solid episode. A little bit of meeting here and there, but it will be interesting to see what comes of this meeting. And, well, we all saw what, the King of Falmouth tried to pull with his, brief discussion with Rimuru and stuff like that. We all saw what the rest of the nobles of Falmouth thought of like even Diablo's offer and stuff like that from the previous season and whatnot. So we're probably going to have that, humanity is top of the food chain. These monsters should just do what they're told. It's like, yeah, that's an interesting theory. You and what army is going to be able to tell them what to do?
Yeah, which it is also worth noting that a big part of, as we've seen, a big part of the human freaking the humans being so anti-monster is a combination of, prior to Tempest, outside of the Demon Lords, there really was no coordinated groups of monsters.
Because the Demon
And
Lords
then
were
also-
usually all just Rami Wish was in the labyrinth. Guy is up in his frozen fortress of solitude that nobody cares about. Dagrul is way out in the west, just screwing around in the ruins with near the other True Dragon, and Malim was just kind of doing other stuff. The only other like real nation was Eurazania. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the only like actual monster nations, quote unquote, was the Beast Folk in Eurazania and Guy up on his continent.
Yeah.
And those were both basically just we just don't even acknowledge those. We just leave them be and do their own thing.
Yeah.
And Malim was basically just viewed as a force of nature.
Yeah.
She just kind of shows up and she ruins things occasionally, and you just have to deal with it.
Yeah, pretty much. Just like in the dungeon. So there you go.
But then also a big part of it is that, as we find out, even before Maribel came in here and started influencing things, the Rosso family has been basically the shadow government for the West this whole time, and the head of the family is a human supremacist.
Right.
So he's clearly been pushing that agenda amongst the freaking rulers of the West.
Yep. So definitely a lot of interesting stuff going on, especially with the the OP being just Maribel. So I don't know. I don't know if Rimuru is going to be able to like convince her or anything like that, or she'll have to be dealt with in a different way. We see the dragon in the OP. You know what I mean? It's heavily implied that that's Malim's. From her myth, where she her was like the sibling that her dad was like, oh, Malim needs like a sibling, so he created this dragon for her, and it was killed by humanity, and that's what caused her to rampage and become a demon lord. Because she tried to bring it back to life, and she didn't do it the same way that Rimuru brought all the souls back, so it came back and as like a soulless rampaging dragon, and then she had to put it down. So if somebody finds a way to like resurrect I think they called it the Chaos Dragon, whatever that dragon is, it's pretty obvious that it's Malim's former sibling. You know what I mean? So
that was the whole thing of like she became the first demon lord because I don't remember who it was. I think it might have been. I think it was Violet who gave her the information initially, or it might have been one of the other True Dragons, but gave her the whole information of the whole kill 10,000 mortals and you gain a wish. And that's the whole thing of like you kill 10,000 mortals, you become a demon lord, and you're granted one wish.
Right.
Which for both Malim and Rimuru, it was the whole revival thing. But the reason why it worked for Rimuru and not for Malim was it takes so long that by the time Malim managed to do it, the dragon's soul had already dispersed. But Rimuru had the quick thinking and foresight of the whole maintaining the barriers to keep the souls intact long enough for him to complete his transformation.
Yeah. So yeah, assuming that could potentially be Maribel's ace in the hole, that kind of thing. Yuki's a wild card at this point. You know what I mean? I'm not completely sold that she has him completely controlled. So if she goes to that length of using Malim's, former sibling against them, I don't know if Rimuru would forgive that. So we'll just have to see what happens with that. The entire Rozo family and the Western Council might just get obliterated by proxy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, Rimuru can be quite ruthless when pushed. But in general, his MO is typically either befriend or replace whoever his opposition is.
Yep.
So either the Rotso family as a whole is getting replaced, or he's going to befriend one of them. And if he's going to befriend anyone, it's Maribel is the most likely because of the whole like shared ambition of world peace.
Yep. Because keep in mind, for anybody who forgot, example, the vast majority of Falmuth's former nobility are still alive. Ed Morris is like just hanging out, teaching Yom etiquette and like being his advisor now. The mage guy, Rosin, he is just in the otherworlder's body, and he's just, you know, under Diablo's thumb. The priest guy that was part of all that was under Diablo's control until he was killed. You know what I mean? Edward, the son, is like a direct advisor to Yom and is like acting as like basically just another kind of advisor for Yom and his wife. You know what I mean? Even though Mulan is, or she's just Mew now for whatever reason. She had to change her name. But
we were talking about that once again. It's very common for when you assume a royal position like king or queen to change your name.
Yeah. But yeah, like the youngest son, Edward, is like just we saw him last season. That's who that was. That little kid was Ed Morris's son. That was gonna, you know, take control of the nation over whatever. But then all that stuff happened, and he's basically just kind of there, like trying to, you know, he's kind of like that intermediary, like, you know, hey, we still have Edward for those of you who are worried about, like, you know, not paying attention to like people who were still fans of the previous administration. You know what I mean? Edward is still, you know, doing stuff. You know what I mean? And Ed Morris is repenting by being like a teacher, basically. You know what I mean? The vast majority of the leadership is still alive. You know what I mean? Raymer only destroyed their military. So
yeah, Raymer, like I said, he either converts or he replaces. Either you, by the end of any conflict with him, you're either working for him or he has replaced you with someone who will.
Yep. So at the end of the day, I'm not totally convinced so far from what we've seen. Maybe we need to get more about what Maribel's about and that kind of thing, even though we've got a reasonable amount on her. She might be slightly different from her grandfather and it got on him. So she might be willing to do that. But once again, if she crosses that major line with Rimuru's best friend Malim, that's probably not something you come back.
Yeah, we'll have to see if that is a her plot or a Yuki plot or the grandfather plot. Who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, like we know the grandfather is probably going to be replaced because he's got 1,000+ years of human supremacy. He's not going to capitulate, probably.
Yeah.
But Maribel, all we know is that she shares the world peace ambition. We don't know if she shares the human supremacy ambition.
Right. So, yeah, I assume that's what the vast majority of this first core, this first half of this is going to be. This first 12 episodes or so is going to be this. You know what I mean? And the Rotso situation might be resolved relatively quickly, especially if this is like the OP. You know what I mean? It could bleed into the second part because of how last season was handled. But by the end of the first core of last season, the stuff with the Holy Knights was resolved. You know what I mean? Because the pacing was good. And I know the second half of this series has a bunch of stuff that happens in it. You know what I mean? So this going more than a core would be surprising to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, we still have... that I know of as far as, like, overarching story things, we still have to deal with Leon. We still have to deal with the Eastern Empire. And then we still have the whole, you know, endgame shenanigans of dealing with whatever the angelic forces are.
Yep. So, either way, lots of interesting stuff to come, I'm sure. At some point, I might try to catch up on the source material just to kind of, like, do what I did with Fire Force. with like My Dress Up Darling, that kind of thing. Just kind of see
Oh.
what stuff changed, what that kind of stuff. But probably won't be doing that for this core.
That's one of the things I was going to mention is I don't know if it was ever actually confirmed, but I'm pretty sure one of the big pacing issues with last season, why it was like all meetings, is once again, they have been primarily just focusing on the main story and cutting out a lot of the side stuff that would have broken up the meetings in favor of doing stuff like slime memories and stuff like that. The slime diaries.
Yeah.
And for what I know, a fair amount of the stuff from Slime Diaries was cut out of season 3. So I don't know if that's entirely all of the pacing issues, but I know at least part of the pacing issues for season 3 being, that time I got reincarnated as a meeting.
Yeah.
Was because of a handful of the stuff that was meant to break up the meetings that was used in the source material got pushed over into diaries instead of in the main series.
So if I find time, once again, I've gotten pretty good at, skimming and reading stuff over the years, and I could probably catch up to this point, no problem. And I remember everything that happens, in actual anime. So if I see something different, I'd immediately peg it and part. So it wouldn't be a lot of reading, I read the last 100 some odd chapters of Fire Force in about 45 minutes because all I was doing was looking for things that were different. You know what I mean? So I only ended up having to read like 10 chapters. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So I'll probably try to slowly catch up and see and just kind of like point stuff out. Stuff that's closer to this. Maybe not stuff that happened in season 1 or 2, because that probably doesn't matter too much at this point. But anything from like last season and up to this point, that I'll see. And if I do end up doing that, I'll talk about it when it happens. I'll just have to see if I find time for that. But that is definitely something I'd like to do for this series, just to know and just to point out like, hey, this was different, just to kind of like give people information. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I still need to freaking try to motivate myself to get back into reading Tanya, because I read the first 2 books of Tanya and 3 books of Overlord way back in the day, but never like continued with the series. And now that, the next season of Tanya is coming back, I do want to try to, at very least, catch up to that point, like at least get to the Fall of the Empire. But that is a lot of reading, because if I remember correctly, the Fall of the Empire doesn't start until book, 8. And the Tanya books are full novels. They're quite word dense. There's a lot to them. So, it's not a small amount of effort to read them.
Right. So, either way, all that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this one. There'll probably be a lot more to talk about in the season of Slime, especially if there's not a lot of meetings and we have to kind of explain. And I do like to point out those kind of real world connections, like the Holy Roman Empire, that kind of stuff, for people to understand where this is coming from, because a lot of the stuff is from real world connections and stuff like that helps authors write stuff like this. And when you recognize stuff like this, it's kind of neat to make that connection, and you kind of have to fully explain it. You can't just say Holy Roman Empire and assume everybody knows what you're talking about, especially in this day and age. A lot of people don't really pay attention to history. So you kind of have to put it out there, kind of like what we're doing for ReZero with like the Greek myth, and we just talked about Orion. If you're not into Crunchyroll player, not a fan of Shion, apparently. But yes, you kind of have to explain that stuff if you're not into like constellations or how their mythos was, with like Orion being like a favorite of Artemis, the Greek goddess, that kind of thing. We kind of have to explain that, because I'm never gonna assume that anybody knows what we're talking about.
Yeah, right.
When it comes to that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? You might get like the Mimi references, like a South Park reference that I make, or an Archer reference, or other anime thing, but like certain like, real world things like mythos and, religion and certain other things, I think it warrants explaining, just in case. I'd say probably a reasonable amount of people don't know what that is, so I'd rather be the one explaining it, so it's not like, what did they mean by HRE? That's stupid. I don't know what that is. You know what I mean? So we have to explain it. If you know what it is, cool. Absolutely. But I'm never going to assume that even the vast majority of people know what we're talking about. So I'm going to explain it every time.
Yeah, I'll have to try to remember to bring it up next time we record ReZero, but freaking one of the things that I did forget to mention, you bringing that up, is it'll be interesting to see if we do actually get any sort of reference to Lyseth. Because for the people who don't know, freaking the whole thing with Shaola, being the tip of the stinger, Lyseth is the other star of the stinger.
Yeah.
They're considered to be twin stars in the constellation.
Right. So, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, people of YouTube, beyond whoever you're watching, as always, we appreciate you stopping by and hanging with us here in the dojo for more Anime Night in the Dojo. And this was Slime, Season 4, Episode 4. So, have a good morning, evening, afternoon, whatever it is for you. Have a good one. See you next time.
Hey everyone, Victoria here. If you enjoyed the video, please consider pushing those like and subscribe buttons. Your support is greatly appreciated. Thanks again for your time, and we hope to see you again in the future.